message.
Hello? I can't hear you, but you can hear me, right?
We interrupt to bring you this.
We've hijacked your daily dose of regurgitated news to bring you Navigating the Truth. Brace yourself, listeners, as you're about to enter a world where the narrative is no longer masqueraded as the truth. A world where the conspiracies of yesterday's translate into the truths of today.
Are you listening?
The veils covering the truth are lifting, and understandings once suppressed are finally being revealed. Will you be ready? And now, your host and navigator through these circles of lies, the host of Navigating the Truth, Caroline Bell Tumblety.
Hi, welcome to Navigating the Truth. I am your host. My name is Caroline Bell Tumblety, and I'm sorry if I had that mic on, and I think I was coughing, and I apologize, listeners. And this is Revolution Radio, and it is a listener-supported 24/7. There are so many awesome hosts, wonderful guests, and there are people behind the scenes here that are making it happen. And hit that donate button and help us out. We are totally listener supported. And with that being said, had a great show earlier. I popped into Solaris's Night Files, and then I was with Madeline for Life in the Hologram, and we had a great guest, Michael Feely. If you didn't catch that, I would recommend you go check out the archives. They'll be up probably later on. And so what am I going to talk about tonight? Well, I have this, there's this paper that had been, I think it was back in 2000, early 2000s. And it was basically, you can access it. It's like public domain. It's, the name of it is Ayrshire Roots, which is AYRSHIRE.com or .co.uk. And Ayrshire. So we're in the Shire, and this is like I live in Ayrshire. And there was a lady who back in, I believe it was 2000. Her name is Kelly D. Whittaker, and she wrote a new theory about King Arthur. And I thought I would read it for you. I mean, it's a theory. I mean, I've read it a number of times, and basically what I found was there was a lot of information here that you could jump from. You know, if you wanted to do any kind of research, if you wanted to look into it a bit deeper, like it's a theory, and it can be expanded on. But there was definitely a couple of things in it that resonated with me. Not the whole thing, but for sure there was a few things. So I'm going to read that. So sit back, have your coffee, your tea, maybe juice or something stronger, whatever it is that you fancy. And I am going to read you this well put together theory about King Arthur by Kelly D. Whittaker. And she starts off, the Arthur legend has been mostly legend for 1500 years. Many philosophers have tried to interpret the Illus of Artius. Geoffrey Monmouth was somewhat successful in translating some of the old manuscripts. Modern times offer higher educated doctorates to interpret the manuscripts. The ancient Knights Templars have excellent records on the genealogy of Arthur, Lancelot, Gilead, and Percival. These new interpretations open the gates to a complete new theory that the great knights and kings spoke upon in the legend of Arthur are really Scots. In 1952, Mr. R.L. Graham Ritchie found and identified Claverrock Castle on the north shore of the Slowey Firth, near the modern-day city of Carlisle. Claverrock is the legendary birthplace of Arthur Pendragon, the son of Uther, and in brackets it says the bad Pendragon. A Roman commander stationed at Hadrian's Wall. Remember that. A Roman commander stationed at Hadrian's Wall. That is who Uther was. The years are during the Dark Ages, when written documentation was very scarce. Geoffrey of Monmouth was a good resource to the written records of Arthur. The only problem with Geoffrey was his lack of geographical knowledge of Britain. Certain names of towns sounded much like the names of Welsh towns. Therefore, he concluded his theory of Arthur being from Wales. And here we go. The study seems to connect Arthur to the areas of the North York near Hadrian's Wall, no further north than the Antonian Wall. On the west, and these walls are obviously the walls that the Romans built. On the west of what is now Glasgow, to the east, and to the east is now what is Edinburgh. This also connects to the Firth of the Clyde and the Firth of the Forth, which is a body of water, it's a sea, and eventually they all run in, like Atlantic and North Sea. The same area that King Arthur was born in. So Carlisle is very important in the history of Britain, but also in the role that Arthur led in becoming the peacemaker of the peoples. Arthur was born in 559 AD, right, according to this. When Columba ordained King Adrian of Dalriada in 574, records show Arthur being Adrian's oldest son. Now, Arthur's mother was, I can't even pronounce this, it's Yengerna del Aquis, the High Queen of the Celtic Kingdoms. Now, she's known by other names. Yengerna was married to Gwyn le Dux of Carlisle, the Duke of Carlisle, basically, and had been sent south to become Glorious, which was the Duke of Cornwall. During this time, it was when Adrian of Dalriada became totally enthralled with the beauty of Yengerna, or better known as Igraine. Later on in the years, after Cornwall had died, Igraine married Adrian, making Arthur a legitimate heir to the throne of Britain. And Britain was being invaded by the Anglo-Saxons during the reign of King Aidan. He was not successful in defeating the Angles. All sides, including the original Scots, who are now the Irish and the Scandinavian, were threatening Dalriada. The Picts and the Alba were fighting over the rights in what is now Scotland. The Christian church was growing stronger each day, and the old Celtic ways were being forgotten. They weren't being forgotten. They were being co-opted. Pendragon and Merlin are both titles. Pendragon meaning head dragon of the island, king of kings, and guardian of the Celtic Isles. Merlin meant seer to the king. Merlin's real name was Emeries of Poyes, the son of Arielus. The Merlin was also an elder cousin of King Aidan. You know, there's a bunch of different Merlins that have been written about. And at some point I will read you the one that is the Scottish Merlin. But right now, I just wanted to add that in. So Merlin was a Celtic priest. And Vivian de Aquis, the grandmother of Arthur, was the queen of Avalon and the high priestess of the ancient Celtic religion. So, what we have here is we have a Celtic priest, a Celtic queen, right? So she's bringing the ancient Celtic kingdoms with her, and she is marrying somebody who is destined to be the King of Britain, or is the King of Britain. So you're talking about two different factions that are merging. And when do we hear about that in the past as having happened? And that would have been the time of Cleopatra. and Caesar or Mark Antony. Again, that was the merging, like the Egyptian way of living was changing as they were adopting more Roman ideas. And also the whole idea was that Egypt had plenty of money, but it didn't really have strength. And so the marriage that Cleopatra was planning was to ensure the continuation, I believe, of her bloodline. Unfortunately, like, she had a sister that was not really quite in agreement with that, and that would be Sinway. We don't really hear much about her. But she was a younger sister of Cleopatra, and basically, let me see if I get it clear. When Cleopatra was entertaining Caesar and then Mark Antony, Sinway did not want to lose the traditions of Egypt. So she wanted to hang on to like what they had. She didn't want to change it. And she attacked Caesar's army and she chased them. And she horseback ride, like, she was young, I think she was like maybe 21, but she led her army and she basically chased him. And he dived into the water, supposedly to get away. Now, what happened was Cleopatra was not really happy about it because it was upsetting her plans. So eventually what happened was Sinway was on the run, and for what I understand, Mark Antony is the one who hunted her down. And on the stairs of Artemis's temple, he murdered her. So anyway, so it wasn't like complete distraction for this story. There is an overlay here. There is an overlay happening, and it has to do with two factions, like a marriage that is supposed to bring peace. It's supposed to bring the continuation, the civilization, the even the evolvement, like to evolve the civilization. So anyway, so in 575 AD, at the age of 16, Arthur was appointed sovereign commander. Arthur did have brothers, and they say that he wasn't an only child. He had at least 3 other brothers. Merlin was appointed to Arthur because he was the eldest. One may conclude that Merlin did raise and protect Arthur. There was a relationship between Arthur and his half-sister, Morgana or Morgan le Fay, the wife of King Urin of Regad or Gowrie. Many people frowned on this act of incest, but to the Celt Briton, it was perceived as a dual nature of God. The ancient principle of the sacred sister bride, a son named Modred, was born from this union. Modred plays a significant role in the destruction of Arthur's realm. That will be discussed later in the series. The old transcripts were confusing to many scholars because of the Welsh-Scottish resemblance of the Gaelic language. Wales and Scotland were very close allies and friends throughout this time frame. The remainder of the story shall prove a theory of Lancelot, Gilead, and Percival also being Scots. As I say, this is a theory. The mystic of Arthur continues with the people surrounding him before, during, and after his reign. The revered names of King Arthur's knights represent a time of loyalty, chivalry, and our modern era. So, like, if this story is like an allegory or like the Bible, like it's a story that is full of what am I looking for? Metaphor, right? Metaphor, like fairy tales also contain like the really old ones. They will contain how to be in the world, how to act, like what it means to be a good friend, loyal, you know. So Arthur, when you think about his knights and what they were representing, like this this starts off as a really good idea. The legends are now considered a very real part of Britain's history. I'm not really sure about that, if it is considered. Merlin, Lancelot, King Lot, King Urin, Gawain, Galahad, Percival are the figures remembered do dearly in the legend of Arthur. Who were Gawain, Percival and Galahad? What were their stations in Arthur's kingdom? Sir Gawain, remember though, throughout the years as a loyal friend to Arthur, the new theory has found documentation that Gawain was the son of Morgan Le Fay. Ho 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 ho! We got some conflict here in King Lot, actually making Gawain the nephew of King Arthur, and might explain the favouritism that Arthur showed to the young man. Arthur took Gawain to the Grail Castle to worship. Gawain remained close to Arthur even until Arthur was killed. Sir Gawain became the protecting knight of the Grail Castle. While Arthur was alive, Gawain did get to wield Excalibur in Arthur's place. So Percival was a cousin to Lancelot and Gawain. He was a bit younger than them. King Percival of the Wastelands was Percival's father, and his mother the widow Lady of Camelot, Lufamor. Lufamor seems to be the daughter of Morgan Le Fay. It looks like Morgan Le Fay had more than one kid, and King Lot. That would make Percival Arthur's nephew. Percival became the king of Grail Castle after completing his holy quest. He married Blanchefleur, the daughter of King Caldemec. See, some of these names I haven't even heard. And this is supposedly documented British history, or maybe legend. You know, you figure when these people have been so famous in a time, you would think you would be able to find them. You know, you would actually be able to locate them. Unless there is something afoot that means to distract you from the truth. And we see this a lot with some of the really good old stories that come down to us, that they have similarities in even older stories. Like when I mentioned the Egyptian, and that would have been more recent times of Egypt. That wasn't even ancient Egypt when we talk about Cleopatra. And, I mean, it would be classed as ancient, but it's not the ancient Egypt. It is more she's probably the most famous woman for Egypt that we all know worldwide. So for her story to be there's a similarity, especially when you talk about the bringing together of these two different massive cultures, like Celtic, the Celtic peoples would have had like maybe thousands of years, at least hundreds of years of having their ways. And then you have an invader, you know, and maybe in the beginning they are fitting in, you know, they are like, they're not trying to do away with or make you change your ways. And then what happens is this integration, this infiltration happens. And that is exactly what the story of Christianity is all about, you know. Like, not to say that there isn't gems within the Christos energy, there are. The Bible is, the stories are much, 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 much older, you know. And they don't have the roots here. And the royal families have done this for, like, I don't know, millenniums, that they would marry, like, the Spanish princess to the English prince. You know, you would have the German with the Swedish, and it was always to ensure, like, the strength of the kingdoms or their allies, or it wasn't necessarily made as a move to completely change the belief systems or the faith values of the peoples. This was something else that started to occur. I like, in my opinion, like this was something else. You know, this was something else that had parasite qualities, in my opinion. But anyway, back to this. So, where was it? Percival was a cousin to Lancelot and Gawain. He was a bit younger than them. I think I read all that part. Okay. Here was a true battle for the love of one's religion. Okay. Morgan le Fay's eldest son by Arthur was made the high priest of the Celtic Church. See, the Morgan le Fay, Morgana being his half-sister. So Arthur is actually the product of a king of Britain and a queen who has pagan roots, like deep royal pagan roots. And Morgan le Fay would also have that, but Uther was not her father. So that was where they were just, they were step brother and sister. But according to this, she wasn't having his babies. She was having babies by King Lot. So Arthur was made the high priest of the Celtic Church. Percival, the youngest son of Morgan, was made the Grail King. Again, old against new, older against younger. What a time of turmoil for Arthur's kingdom. Percival was the last Grail King. Sir Galahad was the son of Lancelot and Lady Elaine. He too descends from the Grail Kings. Now, the Grail Kings, okay. On his material side, he was the last of the Grail lords that assigned 12 men to the order of the Sainient Grail. The Grail castle was destroyed after Percival. What was the Grail? What was the Round Table? All of these famous men served both. The new theory of both of these will explain in the next story. So, Sir Lancelot is a fairy tale to most. The brave, gallant knight that rescued Queen Guinevere for an abduction by her strongest enemy, the Lady of the Lake, plays a large role in the upbringing of Lancelot and Guinevere. Lancelot states, "I come from across the lake," when he introduces himself to Arthur. The reason being that he was raised by the dynamic Lady of the Lake. Guinevere was also raised by the same Lady of the Lake. The lady sent Lancelot to Guinevere's service when he reached manhood. Lancelot was sent to the lady to kill 3 kings and learn the real name. Who was Lancelot, and where does his name stem from? Lancelot conquered the 3 kingdoms: Patrick of the Hill Fort, Lamores, and Dercal. These lands entailed parts of Edinburgh, Taltolon, Berwick, and Melrose. The last kingdom he won was Dercal, which translates from King Ulric's Welsh, meaning river, and Cal, or Cal, meaning winding. So, Calder. It's Calder. There were 2 Calders on the southwest side of Edinburgh, both on the sandy shores of the Almond River. The Lady of the Lake wanted Lancelot to win his rightful fortress named Dodun. Lancelot first had to fight Prince Meligan, who held the mighty fortress. Wow, these guys, the Dark Ages were pretty grim. There had been 2 previous matches between Meligan and Lancelot in which Lancelot won, but King Ulric allowed Melicant to live. The third and final battle, Guinevere was there to witness. The defeat of Melicant, Guinevere gave the order for Lancelot to behead Melicant. Okay. Once Melicant was beheaded, he heard a woman's voice cry out to him, "You are Galahad." The name of Lancelot was after his grandfather, Galahad, or Angelus, which translates to Angus. Lancelot by birth was the Angus, King Agilus, King Loth, the King of Hall. Were all three present at the coronation of King Arthur? The lands of the Dudan was in Guinevere's dowry to Arthur. Arthur gave the old lands of King Org and Ulic upon Arthur's marriage to Guinevere to prevent a war. These are the lands that Lancelot won. The modern positions of these lands is in Stirlingshire. Stirling Castle is built on the ruins of Dodon. Lancelot is derived from the Old French. In Gaelic, it is pronounced Angelus. So, what we have is back in 1500 years ago, what they are describing to you is there is multiple kingdoms. There are multiple kingdoms in Britain. There is not just one king or two kings or three kings. There are lots of kings. I think at one point they say there are maybe 12 of them. There might even be more. So there are all these, it's all been broke up into factions. And so when you hear like king this, king that, it's because there was a lot of kings. Because later on they became like landlords and landowners, but back then they would have been a king. You know, they would have had the Great Hall. They would have been the leadership. They would have been what the people would have looked to make life better. Like, yeah. So the modern, like Stirling Castle, that's really interesting because that castle still stands, and it's actually a really, really cool place. So King Ban, or Brandon, was Lancelot's father, and his mother was Vivian d'Acquis. Vivian's mother was Vivian d'Acquis, the dynasty queen of Avalon. These ladies were a direct descendant of Joseph of Arimathea. Wow, that's pretty wild. They were also the queens of the ancient Celtic Christianity. So, there you have it, right? Celtic Christianity. You got both words in the one sentence together. So it's no longer Celtic traditions and Christian traditions. They have now become Celtic and Christian. The Dark Ages held many myths. King Arthur's wife, Guinevere, is one of those myths. Every scholar, historian and poet have recognised Guinevere. I'm listening to see if I can hear the music, but I'm not hearing anything, so I think I don't think I have a break, so I'm going to keep going. The Dark Ages held many myths. King Arthur's wife Guinevere is one of those myths. Every scholar, historian, poet have recognised Guinevere, but with reluctance. One reason for this apprehension is the lack of support and documentation. Some historians claim there were 3 Guineveres who were married to Arthur. The Guinevere that is told in this part of the new theory is the first wife, Guinevere of Org. Guinevere, a Celtic princess due to inherited most of Britain upon her marriage. She was the daughter of King Org of the Douglas River. Her father had been defeated by King Urin of Gore. Guinevere's father wanted her to be well trained to defend her large estate, so he sent her to Roman training camp. And Claravere Rock on the east bank of the Nith. She received full training to become a commander in any army. While she attended the training, she met Arthur. So, legend speaks of Guinevere's beauty. She was very handsome in her strange ways. Imagine a stout-built woman of average height with long dark golden hair and dark blue eyes. This is a trait of her Scandinavian blood. A fair-skinned warrior that was one of the richest women of all times. Many men pined for her. Guinevere did something unheard of in her time. She chose to marry Arthur. This broke the earliest arrangement by her father to King Earn. Guinevere took with her to Stirlingshire the Round Table. This was along with all the lands of Britain she possessed. Urim was extremely angry at Guinevere's decision. He chose revenge on Guinevere and Arthur. Urim began a waging war on Arthur. They fought 4 battles. Arthur was the victor in all 4. Urim did not give up. He was more determined than ever before to take what was promised to him. Urim changed his strategy to concentrate on Guinevere. Urim abducted Guinevere on 2 separate occasions. Guinevere was held captive for a year on the first kidnapping. Lancelot and Sir Gawain came to Guinevere's rescue. Lancelot faced Meleagant, the son of Urim, in battle. Lancelot won, but let Meleagant live. Meleagant wounded Lancelot. As Lancelot turned to leave with Guinevere, Lancelot promised to finish it by arranging a meeting 1 year from that day with Meleagant. Guinevere holds to her strange ways by keeping the heads of her enemies in jars. That's not really the romance that they tell you. Okay. And you know what? She sounds more like what the women would have been like back in the day. These jars went with her. I mean, think about it. I mean, when you think about you have these multiple kingdoms all around you. You have constant battles, for property or feeling they didn't pay attention, because she took a table, that kind of infuriated somebody. So, I mean, I don't know. It seems like nerves are kind of tense. So, Guinevere holds to her strange ways by keeping heads of her enemies in jars. These jars went with her every place she went. Guinevere's coat of arms bore 3 doves. These doves represent her religious beliefs to St. Julian. Throughout the next 15 years or so, Guinevere is held as a ruthless queen. She's feared. She fears nothing or no one. Many people of Britain, ancient Britain, compare her to Queen Boadicea. There's another thing there. So, Queen Boadicea. She never gave Arthur any children, but she did have a son, Lohot, before she married Arthur. The father of Lohot is not mentioned. So, King Arthur made Mordred co-regent of Brittany with Guinevere. Guinevere married Mordred in an ancient Celtic ceremony. This was not understood by many. The purpose of the marriage was for religious reasons. Mordred was the high priest of the Celtic realm. Guinevere was the high priestess. Therefore, the union was expected. Guinevere was older than Mordred, but by the amount of years it is not known. The second abduction of Guinevere had been referred to a Sleeping Beauty scenario. Interesting. King Euron has kidnapped Guinevere again. This time Guinevere gave in to the demands of the king. His demands were for all of her properties she owned. Once she had agreed to his demands, Euron threw her in a snake pit. Guinevere is bitten on the finger by a viper. Lohot rushes to defend his mother. He tries to save her, but only to arrive and find her already dead. So, Guinevere is bitten by a snake. Who else was bitten by a snake? That would have been Cleopatra, right? She took her own life. Then This is when Loha is killed. His head is entered into the tomb of his mother along with her body. This happened before Arthur went to the continent to search for the Holy Grail. Guinevere was buried at Avalon. Modred was left as regent of Britain. Before Arthur left, he did remarry another Guinevere. Guinevere, the first wife of Arthur, was buried in her home, Avalon. The Round Table and the Grail lore is a significant part of the Arthur legend. These two items are representations of fairness, equality, justice, and faith. These were holy relics in a time of turmoil. So what we got going on here is, if you go to Egypt and look at Horus, and the story with Horus is very, very similar to the story of Jesus. And also they give the date of birth, Horus, as being the 25th of December. So it's almost like when you hit on like the right formula for a story, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, you know, like, because there is a lot to be learned for the stories when we start to understand that they are actually talking about cycles. They are talking about ages that are changing, that are moving, and it has to do with the merging, you know, cultures, of traditions. But the Christianity is basically on the move, you know. It's on the move for Rome and Italy, and it is moving out through Europe, and it has been around for a while, but in order for it to completely take hold, it really has to get rid of the pagan way of being, and that is its objective. So this story is basically, we have a king, Arthur. He is a legend, right? The hero who is going to unite the kingdoms. And what happens is he picks one over the other. Is basically what happens, and everything falls. It didn't become a marriage. It became a choosing of one over the other. Okay. So the legend handed down for 150 centuries states that Arthur sat at a circular table that had no head position, so all men were equal. They sat at it. 13 men sat at the round table. These 13 were equal to each other. The group at the round table were the reigning lords of the Isle of Britain. The name of these kings were Aulus, Virianus, Gavialo, Luro, Vendotrium, this all sounds like Latin, starter of Elden Dotrium, Cador Corobine, Hibernian, I recognize that. Melalucinus, I recognize that. The Dolivers, I don't recognize that. Loth, Lyceum, Achilles, and Dracoum. These, I know that this is a change here. These elven kings sat in high council with Arthur and Percival. The number 13 represents Christ and his 12 apostles. 13 also has a whole lot of other things connected with it. This made Arthur's round table, This made Arthur's round table holy according to ancient beliefs. This is compared to the Grail lore. 13 men sat at the council for the sacred Holy Grail. So, look at, there are parallels here with Arthur and also Jesus. for the that the 13 were equal to each other. That is something really, really beautiful. That whole idea that you sit at a round table, there is no head of the table. Like everybody is equal. People from all nations have been searching for the round table for hundreds of years. Modern scholars have been able to translate the old languages used by William of Malmesbury, Geoffrey of Monmouth, and Chariton of Troyes and Gilead's into our own modern languages. The translation is able to describe the round table more accurately. Wesley's adaptation of Monmouth states, first, Artius la round table. Arthur made a table round. Roundatus represents early Christianity by duplicating the tomb of Christ. Reverend Dr. William Stuckley published a flyer about an ancient building he found in 1720. He found it on the Carron River bank near Falkirk, and that's in Scotland. The local folks called this unusual structure Arthur's Owen. The people believed it to be a giant oven to bake bread for Arthur's army. The funny-shaped building made from stones looked like a huge beehive from the exterior. This structure was circular beehive built of 40 courses of ashlar blocks. These blocks were placed upon an elevated square platform without the use of mortar. Arthur's Owen aligned with the midsummer solstice, very similar to Stonehenge. Dr. Stuckley published a book in 1743 called Abery. This is the year Arthur's Owen was demolished to use the stones to build the dam. The drawings of Stuckley were near perfect measurements. The flyer can be seen at Glastonbury to this day. Linguistic evidence plainly shows that Arthur's Owen is the origin of the round table. The Owen was used to house holy relics, a place of worship. The round table branched into the order of the round table. This was a religious military order compared to the Knights of the Thistle. All right. I don't know if I'm going to get through all this tonight. Let's see. Grail lore has been much easier to verify its existence. The Grail Castle for Joseph of Arimathea, to house the Grail, dish, bowl, or cup that Christ used at the Last Supper. Then Joseph used it to catch Christ's blood when Christ's side was pierced on the cross. Joseph, Mary Magdalene, with her children and a few other early Christians, came to the Isle of Britain to build a special place to hold the cup of Christ. By the 5th century, the cup had been lost due to many invasions of the isle. Joseph of Arimathea was made St. James. St. James wanted a secret fortress to hold the Holy Grail, so he built the Grail Castle. The patrons of the Grail Castle formed the Order of the Holy Grail. The organisation is structured on the basis of the round table. It consists of 13 men to sit on the High Council. So the Order of the Grail is the only ancient Christian organisation from Britain that exists now. The Knights Templar can honestly claim its heritage. The Order of the Grail is the foundation for the Knights Templar. This is really interesting. This is a great theory. She's done quite a bit of work. And I remember reading this before, and I've always kept it because it is a good one. But as I say, it's in the public domain, and you can actually go and read it for yourself. It's a whole website, and Ayrshire Roots. AYRSHIREROOTS, and it's .com or .co.uk. So, let's see. So, scholars have interpreted the ancient manuscripts that were originally Celtic languages as Old French, therefore causing certain words to have different meanings than those languages that were of Old German origins. Bard Talisman gave a description of Avalon as insula, proform, fortuna, which is Old French translates into islands of apples. The bard spoke Celtic, which is a form of Old German. Therefore, the description he offered means isles by the sea that has profound vegetation, and the inhabitants lived very long lives. In German, King Ori was Guinevere's father. Old French has his name spelled Gore, which is Gorre, or Gore, Gorray, would have been the lands in Brittany. Another pronunciation was found by de Tours and Maria de France. The two poets stated that Guinevere was from the lands of Gore. This changed the landmass from Brittany to the Isle of Man. This location would explain the strange spelling of Guinevere. Her name was Pictish. The Picts were ruling the Isle of Man at the time of Arthur. Interesting. So, scholars, let's see, this opens a new door, or possibly a very old one, to the legend of Arthur. Why the Isle of Man and not Glastonbury? What support and documentation are available on the locations of Avalon? The King of Norway, Maria de France, and Percival manuscripts all concede that Lancelot's description of his trip to Avalon. Percival's coronation and marriage is recorded as so. Several vessels that transported the wedding party to the small isle, which stood offshore, about a mile from the Gallocks. This isle was the loveliest in the world. It was perfectly square. Nobody could tell which side was longest. Named for a pagan king, Thaddeus, who built its walls wide enough for two chariots to ride side by side. There were 4 towers at the 4 corners, supported upon pilings and sustained by vaults. There was a massive drawbridge operated by pulleys. An arm of the sea came almost up to the walls, over which was a famous sword bridge, where many a head was cut off when Malegolant was lord. On the isle was a cemetery, where lay many dead under tombs, slabs, covered by writing giving the names of the barns. There were many rare trees on the isle, and they gave off lovely perfumes, which pleased immensely. And in the midst was a fountain, where the water issued from a copper horn. It was sweet and cold, none better anywhere. There was only one entrance to the isle, which was closed otherwise, and the entrance was through one most elaborate constructed portal. The abbot had just ordered dinner for the kings when suddenly the heavens split. Nobody could even see anyone else. The thunder followed the lightning so closely that each bolt seemed to fall on each man's head. The torment raged so fierce that the trees were uprooted and hurled against the walls. The ocean was so whipped that the waves leaped the ramparts, flooding the isle until everything was afloat and everyone would be drowned, if each had not instantly leaped to the walls. Then the weather worsened, causing such suffering as their ancestors have never seen before or experienced. The king huddled up on the stone wall, and the queen beside him, both struck by such floods of seawater that they were nearly swept away. There they clung day and night for 3 days and 3 nights, without food or drink, or sleep or rest. The queen mother died. When the weather cleared, they saw that all the ships had been lost. When the water drained away, a horrible stench rose from the cemetery. Those across the gulch say the storm saw the storm and sent the boats and the barges and the galleys to the isle, but most of them could not endure the stench. The survivors of the storm hid in the forest and ate game. When the king returned later to the isle, he was able to report the stench had come from the corpse of Joseph of Arimathea's wife. She had been pagan. Wow. So, what were they saying there? You know, they stink because they were pagan? I don't know. Joseph of Arimathea needed a grand place to store the Holy Grail. When he arrived at the Peel Castle owned by the Pictish pagan king, Joseph knew this was the chosen place. It took many years for Joseph to convert this king, I bet. The old king finally accepted Christianity and the order of the Holy Grail. I highly doubt that, but there you go. This little isle is St. Patrick's Isle, off the west side of the Isle of Man. The ruins of Peel Castle remain even today. The small island was a very important place of worship in the early Catholic Church. So important that the Pope actually sent St. Germanus there in the 5th century. St. Patrick preached there in 444. St. Germanus was there to convert the pagans to Christianity, and he did accomplish what he was sent there to do. St. Germanus was also a fair man. He allowed the Grail ceremony, Easter and All Saints' Day to be incorporated into the Christian teachings. Wow. So, Sir John Rice, the other scholar, had translated the old language which supporting documentation that Avalon, the Grail Castle, and Arthur's third castle, Galoch, was indeed on the Isle of Man. Gervase of Tilbury painted King Arthur in a royal establishment, claiming that the palace was in the three-sided, three-legged island of Sicily. Interesting. The mystery, the three-sided three-isle is actually the Isle of Man and no, the Isle of Sicily. The mystery still remains why the legend was moved to Glastonbury in Wales. A hypothesis is King Henry II was so obsessed over the predictions of Merlin that Arthur would come back again, that Henry actually had the evidence moved to Glastonbury, so he could have the bishops keep a very close watch. When Glastonbury burned, Henry II had it completely rebuilt. It was not completed until his death, so Richard the Lionheart finished the task. The new theory has been fully documented through the past 1500 years. The information stating that Arthur was a real king, Guinevere being a Celtic priestess, Camelot being a real place, and all the other people mentioned as once living and fighting for their beloved religions existed. The Grail Castle and Avalon have now been translated from old documents. This new theory may be just a legend to some, but to one who believes Arthur, his realm, his castle, and Avalon was once the reality some 1500 years ago. So that is the theory that has been put together by, I'll read her name again, it was Kelly D. Whitaker. Now, it's not a bad theory, and she does tie in a lot of information that I will be able to show you how it ties in later. And I can tie it into where I am on the map and these ancient places and where they actually really are. Like, even though we have had multiple... Oh, and there's the end of the show. So how do you believe that? Anyway, okay, listeners, thank you for listening, and thank you, Revolution Radio, and I will be back next week. So tune in for Navigating the Truth. All right, bye.